The state's primary industry sector is critically important to the state's economy. It accounts for about half of the state's exports, so it's quite important in terms of the regional economy as well as the overall state economy. It has had quite a number of issues in the last 2 decades as it's transformed from the old farming industries that we've known to modern high-tech industry sectors. A lot of that has been due to necessity, the fact that the market has changed and is requiring businesses to be larger in scale. That has also had an impact on the types of jobs that are within the industry. So as the companies become bigger, the way they operate changes, the technologies they use change, and so the actual skills that are employed by people within the industry also change. One of the issues we faced is that because a lot of the industry is in regional areas, and there's been a progressive ageing and depopulation of these areas, it's been much harder for companies who are located there to source labour to fill not only the general positions they have, but also these more specialist positions. So they really had no option but to turn to migration. Now that's not a bad thing because it brings into the state new skills from overseas and often new methods of production, which are useful for our own businesses. But it does mean that they've had to resort to that in the face of people not wanting to work in regional areas, not selecting the agribusiness industry generally to work in. And it's also meant that the companies themselves, when they lose labour or labour retires, they've had to go through a fairly tortuous process to find that labour. The issue, I think, is also complicated by the fact that we have a system, a migration system, that hasn't really kept pace with many of these changes. We've noticed, for instance, that we don't have many of the occupations listed under our classification of occupations model, which is used for migration. That makes it difficult when you want to bring in a production horticulturalist and they don't even recognise what a production horticulturalist is. They think it might be a labourer, so they don't approve the visa. Those practical issues are things that we have to work on all the time, and it means that we are constantly working with agencies such as Migration Solutions to put in place more robust mechanisms to source labour and match labour against the occupations. Previously we had a regional 457 visa that was administered through the state immigration area. That worked really well for the industry. What it did was it allowed industries to nominate specific categories of people they needed for these new job roles that are occurring in the industry. When that was removed, it made it much more difficult for businesses in regional areas to actually access the skills that they need. And we fell back into a standard system, if you like, where people who might have been formerly classified at the lower skill levels found themselves with technical skills that were very useful for our industry, but the overall package meant that they couldn't be supported to come to Australia, and it made it more and more difficult. What's occurred, I think, is the recognition that skills matching process has to be something where industry is much more directly involved. We do a lot of that in our Skills Council, and we see that there's a clear need for a more dedicated regional 457 visa program to support particularly the agribusiness industry, but also other industries within regional areas. It's a must really for the future. In order to sort of meet future skill needs at all levels, in the transport sector and agribusiness and all the key health areas, we really need to start to think about a better planning model which is based on real industry intelligence and real industry forecasting. And that is the role of the Skills Council. That's what we do. We actually track that demand. We work with businesses across all sectors and see where the demand is likely to be in, say, 4 or 5 years' time. That gives us an opportunity to then alert governments to the fact that we need particular groups of labour in this state to support these industries. It's going to be required to meet the demand for all of those technician level jobs, which we're not providing adequate training for in Australia, unfortunately. It also means that we're going to have more specialist personnel, people like agronomists, who actually provide the skills to grow our crops. We're going to need more of those people from overseas, and in the global competitive market, that's going to become a bigger issue. One of the key issues we have is a reluctance by people within the domestic labour market to move into regional areas. So along with depopulation, the loss of people from regional areas, it's creating a serious issue for those businesses operating there. And because they're important to the state's economy, we really need to have something which is going to provide that surety of supply of workers. The training system hasn't been delivering them. In fact, if anything, we've been losing many of the courses, particularly university courses, that focus on those occupations. And so what's going to happen in the near future is we're going to find more and more difficulty in getting people within our own economy to work within regional areas and work in these industry sectors. So it's becoming more and more critical that we have clear strategies and government-supported strategies to bring migrant workers into regional areas, particularly skilled workers, to fill these positions. It's quite clear that some of these businesses will go offshore or will just simply shut down. Changes that many of these industries are having to adopt really are a survival issue for them, very much a survival issue. If they don't adapt quickly and they don't change how they recruit people, how they train people, how they put in place new technologies, they won't survive as a business. It's that dynamic. And really, the labour force issue, whilst it might not have been a number one issue for many businesses because they're more focused on growing their crops, at the end of the day, no people, no industry. It's as simple as that. So we really have to focus on it in the next decade, and I'm hopeful that the sort of partnerships that certainly Migration Solutions has with our Skills Council and other bodies too is part of the future for our state. If we don't get this right, we face a very uncertain future.